we still find that we cannot get this particular opportunity. So today we are going to see what are some of the reasons as to why we are not getting these opportunities and what can we do differently for us to increase our chances of getting the opportunities. And it's my request that if you have joined, kindly mute your mic so that you don't disrupt people in the background. That would be my request, because once your mic is on, you're inviting us into your living room. So thank you. For those who are joining for the first time, my name is Coach Kelvin Waga, and my mission this year has been to impact as many job seekers as possible. This I've done, and I have over 10K success stories to share that have already shared this year. This is through helping people secure jobs. This is through interview coaching. This is just helping so many realize their dream. Because one thing I found out that it is evident that most of us, we are in jobs that we don't enjoy doing, and we are straining in these particular jobs. Maybe one reason might be due to toxic work culture. The other reason might be remuneration, a remuneration which is not matching our output, and so many other reasons. And so many of us are looking for job opportunities that is very difficult to get right now. And for that reason, you realize that there's kind of frustration. There's kind of frustration when it comes to that. So that is why we organize these sessions to enlighten job seekers on what they ought to do to increase their chances of getting those particular jobs. So today I saw it wise to see just to take us through the application process, not necessarily, but the shortlisting process. What is it that some of the candidates are looking for? And why is it that even though you qualify for this particular position, when you send out your application, you still will realize that you are not being invited for an interview? And going henceforth, what do you need to do to increase your chances of getting this particular invite? So that is what we are going to talk about today. And before I do that, I would call for us to share. Some of the things that we expect to learn, and I'll give this chance to a lady and a gentleman. The good thing is, if you take this opportunity and speak up, maybe your challenge can be addressed. So I'll ask two volunteers, a lady and a gentleman, to start us off with their expectation for this meeting. I don't know who is going to start. A volunteer? A volunteer who wants to go first? Something they would really love to be covered during the ongoing session. I'll pick. Okay, if we are not philanthropic today with sharing, allow me pick at random. I'll pick Gladys. What do you expect to learn in today's session? And we only have one Gladys in the room. Jebet, what is your expectation of today's meeting?
Okay, so my living room is a bit noisy. The kids are watching a cartoon. But what I am looking to is, I've been trying to apply for new jobs, but I don't get even those invitations. So maybe you would show us how you can position yourself when you're applying for those jobs, especially the ones that you think you've qualified, but you don't get to get even an invite of an interview. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Moses Ngumi. Moses.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
I hope each one of us is okay as I am. And my challenge has been on several applications, especially I think they are over 8. Rarely do I get shortlisted or message back on the progress of the application. It is just once I was told it was not successful. And I've done so many, even today, I did some, even yesterday, but I don't get now the feedback. I hope that if that might be addressed for me to better my application.
Okay. I'm giving an opportunity
Thank
to
you.
one last person. Joshua Odhiambo.
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, I wanted to speak. Uh,
The
First of
floor,
all, good evening.
the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much once again. So, on my side, I've been working, though whatever I do, I don't feel like it's enough with the whatever I'm earning. So, actually, I've been looking for a new thing that can at least help me.
Anne, kindly mute your
There
mic.
is somebody.
Sorry, Anne, kindly mute your mic. Okay, you can proceed, Joshua.
Okay, thank you. So, I was saying, like the current situation whereby we are living, you realize that we are earning something that cannot help us grow. So my expectation is, how can I get something better that can at least change my life, not the way I am today, but to be better than the way I am today. That is my expectation from this meeting, actually. So through these invitations, you see, we do apply, but some you are shortlisted, but you don't qualify. So kindly help us there.
All right. Okay, thank you so much. And I'm hoping that by the end of this session, we are going to learn a thing or two and what we can do differently to change the situation. One thing I would tell you that research shows that in the world, like we're living in a very competitive world, and what it means that there are so many people struggling or there are so many people fighting for the same opportunity. So there is a competitiveness when it comes to there's competitiveness when it comes to getting these job opportunities, and you realize that when a position is advertised, it will attract sometimes thousands and thousands of adverts. And what you realize that sometimes this hiring organization might not get the time to go through all the applications that have been submitted. So they might be selecting just a few. Kindly, if you've joined, it's my request that you mute your mic. So what happens is you realize that they might not be going through all the applications. And this is one thing that I've seen most people do. Some of us, we wait until the deadline day or a day to the deadline is when we submit our job applications. And what happens, especially when this happens, when they select, let's say, for example, they only need a single candidate. And after going through maybe the first 10 CVs, they've gotten the four perfect candidates for that particular role. There will be no need for them to go through all the 9,000 or maybe all the 10,000 job application just to pick on one candidate. So one thing I would advise that when you see a position advertised, always ensure that you send your position, like you send your application early time, so that at least you can appear amongst the batch. Sometimes it is applicable, but in most cases it might not. But always ensure that you apply to jobs that are posted early, especially if you can get access to job posted within the first 24 hours. It would stand because your CV will be subjected either through the selection, or you might be subjected to maybe selection by the hiring panel. So that might be the number one reason as to why this is not happening. The second thing is just like I mentioned, you realize that the job market right now is very competitive. And what happens is you realize that some hiring managers, when they are hiring for position, they're looking for a specific set of skill. So what most of us do, anytime we go through the job advert, and then we see that the job advert is somehow in line with our CV, like we have most of the competencies required. We see no reason to tailor make our CVs to this particular job advert. But what you realize that whatever you are leaving out, that one skill that you're leaving out is the determinant when it comes to these people, when it comes to an organization, or when it comes to an hiring manager getting to call you for an interview. So it is very important that any job that you do, you need to, it's very important that any job that you apply to, you need to do the aligning of which you are going to see in this course. So those are just but a few, but we are going to, those are just but a few, but we are going to see some of the reason. So in this webinar today, we are going to see what are some of the common reasons for job applications rejections. And then we are going to understand the employer's perspective when it comes to selection of these particular roles. And then we are going to go through proven strategies for success. And then finally, we'll have, if we get time, we'll have some resources and tools for job seekers to help them navigate through these processes. So what are some of the common reasons why your job application sometimes receives the rejection? One of the most and the main that cuts across is a poorly crafted resume. One thing I've realized is, just like I was mentioning earlier, when you're applying for a role, some of us tend to assume on the face value that their CV qualifies for that particular job that they're applying for. Let's take for an example, you're applying, you have a background in accountant, but at some point in your life you did sales and they're looking for a salesperson. You have what they are looking for, in your CV under the sales role that you did. Automatically you'll assume that the hiring manager will go down to the career highlights or the employment history section to read through the qualifications that you have. So you have some section of your CV talking about sales, but in all your background you have is accounting. What happens is, because you have this component, you'll assume that automatically this one will qualify you for that particular job. So anytime you're going through this job application, one thing that you need to do, you need to ensure that you have a well-crafted resume, tailor-made specifically to fit the job that you're applying for. And then ensure that you don't have spelling mistakes, and then you don't have irrelevant detail when it comes to these jobs. One thing I've also seen with most of the resumes that I revamped, in the past, it was easy to have. In the past, it was easy to get a job with just a basic resume. But just as I had mentioned, that we're in a very competitive world, and what this means is you need to have a resume that convinces the organization or the hiring manager that you have what they are looking for. And when it comes to this, even when you are talking about the roles, like your duties and responsibilities, you need to talk about them in what I call them formula. I will kindly ask that we all mute our mics unless you've been given an opportunity to speak. So you'll realize that the way you present your duties and responsibilities of that particular CV, you need to differentiate it from the job description that you're given. Remember, you're talking about yourself, you're talking about what you can do. So what will give you a competitive advantage is you can quantify your services, you can quantify, not your services per se, but you can quantify your duties and responsibilities in form of achievements. What did you do and what results did it bring to that particular organization? Ensure you don't have the spelling mistakes, and then also ensure that you don't have irrelevant details. Some of us still have irrelevant details such as date of birth on the CV, such as the agenda, such as the things they like, and such kind of things. Unless it is it's a requirement in the job ad, but there are things that you don't need to include on your CV. Then number 2 is generic applications. Yes, you have reached out to your CV revamper or your coach, and your coach has done the CV for you. Some of us think that this will do magic for us in a way that if I use the same CV to apply for this particular job, as long as I'm applying for accountant role, And in my CV, I revamped my CV to specifically fit the accountant role. This one will cut it all, and I don't need to align my CV to a specific, I don't need to align my CV to the job advert that I am interviewing for. So what this makes you do is you realize that you'll miss opportunity because you have not tailor-made your a job application. Let's take for an example, your CV was revamped, and maybe the person who worked on your CV, you have, for instance, tech-savvy experience. You have experiences with these EPR systems, or you have experience with the HR system, or you have experience with CRMs, these customer relations systems. And these are things that are not included on your CV. And according to the job advert, they are looking for a specific candidate that maybe has a particular technical experience in that. You realize that you may say that this is not important when it comes to this particular job application, but that is now what will differentiate you from a better candidate. So it's always important that when you're setting this application, always ensure that you have reflected almost 90% of what they are looking for. And if we've been working with you, you realize that I've shown you people on how you can tailor make this application so that you don't have to rework the whole of your CV. You only need to work like 4 sections of your CV, whereby your profile summary or your bio should reflect exactly what they're looking for. This can be in terms of the skills that they are looking for, the education or qualification that they are looking for, and the experiences that they are looking for. These are some of the keywords you can pick from relevant job adverts. I have seen people here that maybe they've made several applications without fail, but after maybe working on their CV, some of them have managed to get this particular role because we've worked together with other people and that has worked for them. But still, always ensure that you populate your application to with the relevant keyword, to the relevant qualifications. Once you've done that, if you have the key competencies session, the core skills that you have, ensure that the core skills that they are looking for is reflected on your CV. What this does for you is you realize that when the system is scanning your CV, for this particular keyword, they are all spread across your CV, and it will give you an added advantage whereby you realize that you get picked by this particular organization. Then some of us, we apply for jobs that we don't qualify for, and for instance, we don't have the qualifications, or we've not aligned the kind of qualifications that we are doing, we have. So what happens in this case, you realize that we just apply and then now wait for an opportunity, for instance, an interview opportunity for us to explain to this why we don't qualify for this particular job. This one will come in terms of maybe years of experience, or maybe you've seen a position, they're looking for someone who is bilingual, somebody who can speak more than maybe one language. And this is not something that you've included on your CV. So you realize that you're limiting your chances of being invited for that particular interview. Weak cover letter or absence of it is also very important. I've seen instances whereby people keep on asking me, for instance, if they've not requested for a cover letter, is it wise for me just to send my CV that way? Or do I need to attach a cover letter to it to showcase my experience? A CV is a CV gives a detailed information about yourself, but you realize that cover letter will will summarize all that maybe in a one-page document for you to give them a general overview of who you are. And then some other reasons we have, like inconsistent or complete, inconsistent or incomplete application details. Some of us don't complete our application. For instance, a job advert says that we should include a salary expectation on the CV. You realize that you send your application without including that. A job salary says that you should include at least 3 relevant referees on your CV. You realize that what you have available upon request. So always ensure that you get that to include that. Number one, another reason why it is important another reason why it is important, or that another reason why you might not get invited for an interview is lack of an online presence or having unprofessional social media. And in this case, I'm talking about the professional platforms such as LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, you might be having an account. And what recruiters sometimes go through is you realize that they get so many candidates. And in this case, because they get so many candidates with the same kind of qualifications that they are looking for, they might go a step further to get to hire this particular candidate. They want to see what are some of the competitive advantage that they would have for each other. This might prompt them to go to your social media, to go to your LinkedIn, just to get to learn more about you. But then you realize that some of us, the name that we've used on our CVs is very different from the name that we use on the LinkedIn. So when the recruiters is looking for us, they cannot find us because the name that you're using is not consistent with what is on the CV. So always ensure that when you're submitting your CV, have the same name that you have on LinkedIn, so that when the recruiters are looking for you, it would be easier for them to find you. And if possible, you can include you can hyperlink your LinkedIn so that when they just click on it, they can get to know you. And having an online presence is not just for the sake of doing it. You need to have an online presence that at least gives more detail about you. And in previous session, I've used LinkedIn, especially if you are an active job seeker. There's a way you can utilize LinkedIn to answer the interview questions, and so that when I get to your platform, I get to know more about you. What I mean when I talk about answering the interview questions, these are the questions that you get asked in the interview. You don't need to wait for that particular opportunity to be invited for them to get to know about you. We have some of the things like maybe you had a weakness that you've worked on. You had a weakness that you had and you worked on that particular weakness. Maybe you had strengths that you think you need to highlight. Maybe you have achievements that you've done. Maybe your perspective, maybe you can talk of case studies so that at least you keep your LinkedIn active. So when I go through your profile and I need to find a competitive advantage, I don't need to scroll through, maybe I didn't need to scroll through your profile that I have already seen. Give me some detail on your social. So in short, I'm saying that you need to have a vibrant social media that speaks about you, so that when there is some of the recruiters are doing their due diligence, especially in a competitive position, you should emerge among one of the best. And then we have some others like failure to follow up on this particular job advert. So when we talk of understanding the employer's perspective, one thing that we need to put into consideration that whenever an opportunity is advertised, there are so many people looking for that opportunity. And for instance, like I was saying earlier, it might attract applications in thousands and thousands and thousands. And out of these particular applications, you'll only realize that only a few people will stand out. So you need to package yourself when it comes to sending this particular application so that you stand out on when they're doing these particular selections. And some of the employers are looking for specific skills when they're hiring candidates. We have the specific skills, experience, and the cultural fit. You'll realize that these are some of the areas maybe we get to miss when we are tailor making our job applications documents. So we don't focus on the skills that they are looking for. For instance, they've said that someone with an experience or a background in the technical experience is key. You realize some of us will start by putting the transferable skills, like the skills that are not relevant to that particular job, and maybe downgrade the skills that the employers are looking for. So ensure that you highlight the skills that they are looking for, because this is what will give you a chance to get that particular position. And then we also have experience. And in experience here, there are some places that you can highlight in the first page of the core achievements, so that at least when the employer is reading the first page of your resume, they should already make a decision, like they should already make a perception about you, either to bring you on board or not. And then now, again, they might call you for an interview to test for the cultural fit. Are your core values aligning with the core values of the organization? Is your work ethics and ethos aligning with the value of organizations? So these are some of the things that when you keep on doing it over and over and again, and during this session, we are going to say, what are you supposed to do for you to increase your chances of getting hired? Because it is very important also that when you're doing it, there's a way that if you do your application, you can show them that you have the right cultural fit for you to get into that particular organization. Then we have time constraints that lead a quick decision. Let's take, for example, somebody has quit and the organization is looking for to fill that position very fast. You realize that what will happen in that case is they will be looking for someone first to fit that particular position, and they might not have relevant time to go through step by step to give a detail as to why they've not invited you to the interview yet. And then finally, we have keywords from the job description, which are very important. And this is something that I'll keep on repeating. If you have someone who have revamped your CV before, or if you've done it yourself, always ensure that you've populated most of the keywords that there is in the job advert, and also to the same onto your application document. But there's one thing I would also like to point out when it comes to the job description. You realize that sometimes the employers, when they're looking for someone, they are not even sure of who exactly they are looking for. And what happens, maybe they might peruse through their previous job adverts just to pick on a job advert that they did earlier for you to call you for an interview. So they've advertised a wrong thing, but they are looking for a different thing. So you realize that in most cases, they'll be looking for things that they didn't mention in the job advert. So when applying for these particular positions, what you need to do is you need to at least have a clue about that specific organization. And I think in our subsequent slides, we are going to see some of the ways in which we can do that. So what are some of the strategies that you can do to increase your chances of getting hired? Number one, just like I mentioned, broad competencies are valuable, but if you focus on the jobs key qualification, it would be critical for your own application. If you're applying for this particular role, don't just brush through it and assume that yes, everything that they've mentioned on that particular job advert is reflected on my resume. You need to spare time to ensure that at least you've aligned it, maybe on the first page or on the first sections of your CV. Because of limited time, you don't expect the employer to maybe research for details in your CV under the profile sections or under the educational background when they are picking candidates. And it takes an average of around 30 to 40 seconds for an employer to shortlist, like to pick through the right candidate. And you can't tell me that within 40 seconds, this person will go read word by word from your CV. They'll only read specific sections that contain the relevant keywords. Because what happens, I've participated in shortlistings of candidates before. What happens is, according to the employer or the company gives a description of the kind of candidate that they're looking for. For instance, we are looking for a leadership, somebody with leadership competencies, the leadership skills. We are looking for someone who has experience in operating A, B, and C. We are looking for someone maybe who has this kind of transferable skills, somebody who is able to communicate, somebody who is able to solve problems, somebody who has maybe interpersonal skills. So when you're going through the job description, as we read step by step, you want to see from the word go, from the bio, all going down to maybe your achievements, or going down to a few career highlights that you have. We want to take. So for instance, I'll read through the profile summary, or some of us call our personal detail or our personal bio. And through the personal bio, I'll be skimming for keywords step by step, trying to see, is this the right, like does this candidate fit this kind of description that I'm looking for? So you realize that if I can take maybe the first 7 keywords or the first 7 deliverables that I'm looking for in this candidate, I don't need to go down and read through all that to see. So that is what will happen. So always ensure that you might have everything that they're looking for, but ensure that you align them on different sections of that particular document that you have for you to help, for you to be found easily. Number 2, you need to customize your CV also and cover letter to emphasize the most relevant achievements and skills that you possess. So what I mean by this, you realize that, okay, each and every coach has their own way, or the CV revampers their own way of doing this particular CVs. And some of us believe this is the template is best, the others believe that the other template is best. My urge for you is, whatever the kind of the CV you have, remember, if I want you to take into consideration whatever the CV template your coach or yourself have made for yourself. Can I be able to find 70% of the information just by looking at the first page, whatever things that you do? Because you realize that some of us, we hide our achievement below the CV, and you realize that this achievement is what will give us the competitive advantage when it comes to the job selection process. So we also have things like use the right keywords. We also have things like for instance, here you use the right keywords to help for your job description to pass through an applicant tracking system. I've had so many questions, people asking me, what do you mean by this ATS compliant CV? What is an ATS compliant CV when it comes also to being shortlisted for this job position? Most of us, we have different understanding of what we mean by an ATS compliant CV. In simple terms, an ATS compliant CV is a CV that when I go through, like, it's a CV that maybe is well structured in terms of the formatting. You have the same font style across the page, and then you've done it in a way that it is easy for us to, it is easy for the recruiting maybe manager or for the recruiter to go through your CV and understand. But you see, some of us, when we talk of an ATS CV, we think it is the block, like the kind of CV which has different blocks, which have different sections, and that might not qualify to be an ATS compliant CV. So I think that is a topic for another day, or something that we've covered before. So what I would tell you is, yes, sometimes you might have been going through it and maybe just ensuring that you put the key position. One thing I would like, maybe as I finalize on this particular point, is when you're doing your job application, sometimes it's very important to identify maybe like 3 or 4 job titles, or maybe job positions that you're applying for, and spend more time in tailor making these, tailor making the CVs for these specific jobs. So what happens with that? It will give you an easier position. And something I've mentioned in my previous sessions is what we do when it comes to applying to this position. Some of us, we believe in quantity instead of quality of the jobs that we apply to. We want to send as many applications as possible. That might not work into your advantage. You need to do your research. You need to do maybe your due diligence to pick this particular position, because if you focus your attention in picking a specific in picking specific jobs, let's take for an example, in your portfolio, you have experience in business development, you have experience in administration, you have experience in administration and all such kind of stuff. You realize that you need to tailor make this so that when it comes to aligning the job advert, you don't need to rework the CV every now and then. And then if you can pick like maybe if you can pick like maybe let's say for instance in a week you apply like 3 job positions, and these are things that you have well researched about the organization, and you've spared your time maybe when it comes to selecting these particular positions that you want to you've taken yourself to self-analyze research, so that when you send your application you will give them an easier time by at least aligning to what they are looking for. Number two is you need to build a targeted job search list. So when it comes to building a targeted job search list, for instance, maybe in the month of January, you're planning to work for Safaricom, you're planning to work for maybe Tesla, you're planning to work for Coca-Cola, you're planning to work for these companies. Identify 20 companies that you want to work with. And once you've researched the organization that aligns with career goals and values, the second thing is now, how do you get connection? For instance, if you're planning to work with these international organizations, you can identify those international organization and list them down. The next thing that you're supposed now to do is to do your due diligence, do research, and find people working in that particular organization. And this is now where the networking part of LinkedIn comes in. So what happens is kindly mute your mic. If you've joined, kindly mute your mic. So what happens with this? Once you've identified, for instance, you've really been looking forward to working with a United, how do they call it, UN, these international NGOs. So what you need to do is, for instance, go to LinkedIn, look for people who are working there, make friends with these people. And the moment you make friends with these people, at least you'll be building that kind of rapport, and they'll be giving you insight on how to get into those particular organizations. One mistake that I've seen most job seekers do, they only reach out to their networks for the sake of recommendations and for the sake of maybe asking them if they have job opportunities. But if you want to work in Safaricom, if you can find people working in the human resource department of Safaricom, and then you get to befriend them. So during your conversation, you'll be like, what is the hiring process like for you? What exactly do they look for when in candidates? So if you've identified this, you can use LinkedIn to find employees at these particular companies. It can be, because normally it takes between 1 to 6 months for you to find a good job, a fulfilling job that you're looking for. So you can dedicate your time on this particular platform and go step by step. Just if you can like get one person, you can even try 5 of them. Out of these 5 person, at least you'll find someone who will open up to you. They might give you their way, or like they might give you the various tactics that they use to get into that organization, and that then you realize that that will be instrumental when it comes to you gaining an upper hand of joining that organization. Once you get the information, like once you politely reach out and politely ask them to give you the information, interviews, or insights into hiring practices, you realize that you will decrease down the time that you would have taken to convince these particular people. And when it comes to the NGOs, what happens is when it comes to NGOs, what happens is some of them, they work through referrals. And if you can have maybe 5 people working in that particular organization, I know this might be tedious, but it might work to your own advantage in that you realize that networking with these people, just getting to ask them how it feels to work there, how did they get there, what are some of the things that these particular organizations are looking for. You realize that one, now you'll be having an upper hand when it comes to even aligning your application documents. And then you'll be able now to know what exactly you're supposed to you're supposed to focus on for you to increase your chances of getting that. So one of the things, you need to regularly update your list and keep track of the applications and responses. And if for those people who are working, because one thing also I'd like to mention when I'm on this, we only think of looking for the next job if, for instance, maybe we feel threatened at our current position, or maybe if we smell, for instance, if we smell a retrenchment, or maybe if we start training. Even if you have a job right now, you might not be looking for that position, but it will be very important for you to build relevant networks to the organizations that you would like to work for. This one will work best for you because at least you know their expectations. And if you can befriend the HR people and maybe the HR people that work in that particular organization, this one will reduce your chances and it will give you an opportunity because you've done your due diligence about the organization. The next strategy is you need to be timely about your application. Apply as early as possible. So many roles close before the deadline. So set up alerts on these job boards to avoid missing on the opportunities. And when it comes to these job boards, one thing I would also like to mention, not every job board that you see advertising position are advertising for the legit positions. You need to authenticate and you need to qualify this particular job board. Because, for instance, I'm not saying, I'm just giving an instance whereby we are looking for a single candidate. And then in the process, you realize that this same job had been advertised in more than 6 job boards. And from that, you'll have to go through the step-by-step application for the sake of shortlisting. So maybe you've trusted Fuzu, or you've trusted Brighter Monday, or you've trusted Career Point Solution, or you've trusted My Job Bags. But then in the process, you keep on applying to jobs in that particular website. But the particular website and job boards has no relations with the organizations that you're applying, as in that to that organization that is hiring. So it is very important that you need to qualify this particular job so that at least you don't subject yourself to applying to fake positions. And then number 3 is for what the next thing that you need to do is in this case is you need to block out a dedicated time for your job application. Some of us, we are looking for the easy applies, those ones that does not require much effort when it comes to it. So we get into that, we scribble the cover letter and we send it. But now when you get to this one, which is step by step, you need to feed in this after attaching your resume, you need to fit in these particular details, your key, your profile summary, you key in the course skills that you're looking for, you key in the kind of when it comes to the job your career highlights. So you realize that some of us, we want it is because we've applied. Now we are relying on luck. We are relying on luck for us to get this particular invitation. So it is very important that you need to book a section or you need to book a dedicated time for the job application. And job application does not just mean sending this particular application. Always focus on networking. One thing also I've been stressing even for the clients that I work with, in the today's world, it is very difficult only to rely on the job applications when it comes to looking for these opportunities. The best platform to get when it comes to getting these jobs is if you learn how to use LinkedIn in the best way possible. You realize that if I have a position in my company, I would give you a shout out and tell you the right time that you need to apply. So if you can rely on LinkedIn, maybe to showcase yourself, because remember, if for instance you're working for this international, like for what happens with this director position or the CCO position in an organization, these are not people who they get through job application. What happens is these are people whom they get through hiring managers. And if an hiring manager can kindly mute your mic. Okay, the hiring managers, what the hiring manager does, kindly let us mute our mic so that we don't disrupt other people's concentration. What the hiring manager does is they go through this particular platform, look for where to poach this particular candidate. And no one can poach you if you've not shown them a reason for them to poach you. So if you're planning to have a job in January, you're planning to have a job in December, you're planning to have a job within next year, the right time to start working on it is now. Have a plan, know how you want to go about it, and then if you list these companies, you do your due diligence, you get people in that company, like you get you contacts in this particular company, they will give you an insight. And once you have them inside there, you realize that they might give a hint when it comes to giving maybe suggestions when it comes to shortlisting. So you need to start preparing your documents again. You need to start working on networking, because LinkedIn has become the best platform to get positioned. And this is evident by last month, I had almost 20 people whom we worked with together, and they got these job opportunities through LinkedIn. Like some of them were even surprised. I just did a post, and someone reached out to me and called me for an interview, because as the hiring manager, they are trying to look for what will position you as the best candidate. So don't over rely on just sending the application, but leverage the art of building your own brand on this particular platform. And once you've made friends on LinkedIn, you've intentionally reached out to these people on LinkedIn, what you need to do is you need to keep on refilling that pipeline. Get engaged with what they're doing. If I view you objectively based on what you are able to do, depending on how you interact maybe on this platform, I would recommend you without waiting for you to come and convince me how good you are at doing that. I think the next session would be, how can you use LinkedIn to turn it into an interview interview answering portfolio? I think that would be the next session, and I would take you through how you can create content in search of answering a job interview, so that when somebody gets into your profile, they get to learn about your competencies, and by the time they're inviting you for an interview, it is just to authenticate if whatever you're talking about is true, and to negotiate your salary. So yeah, to negotiate your salary. So these are just but a few, but I want you to do, sometimes it's not your fault that you don't get invited, because for instance, it might be your CV has not been looked into. It must be things like, for instance, some other people, there was already someone who was selected, but still they don't want just to go through the process for the sake of the face value. So this would be just a few of them. But what I can tell you, if you have to pick one thing from this meeting today, is most organizations are hiring the services of recruiters. And what the recruiters are doing, they are looking for people who fit. And the only way they're looking for people who fit are the people who live the talk of what they're talking about. So this might be just a few of them. There might be several reasons, but how you package yourself as a candidate would highly determine if you will get called for an interview or not. Okay, so that marks the end of the presentation. So we'll welcome the questions. So first of all, I'll start with what is in the chat session, and then I'll give an opportunity for us, maybe if you have questions that you'd like addressed. Karen says, I would like to know if the age also plays a part when the employees are shortlisting. Yes and no. In some instances, the age plays part, because maybe they are looking for a certain age, especially when it comes to the receptionist jobs, or when it comes to like in particular industry, the hospitality industry, they might consider an age when they're looking for candidates, but in most cases, no. And for you now to avoid that, avoid putting avoid putting your personal details, like for instance, your date of birth into your CV. Number two, Winnie says, expectation is on what causes one to have the many regrets despite meeting all. Expectations is on what causes one to have the many regrets despite meeting all the qualification. I think that one I've addressed. Mercy says, kindly touch on how you go about redundancy when looking for a job. Mercy, maybe you need to give me, more details. I don't know at what point you guys lost me. I'm seeing kindly coach increase the volume. Good evening, coach. Kindly touch on internship application in regard to job search. Yeah, internship, maybe you might not be having the relevant experience, especially when looking for this particular internship. But now this, you'll have to leverage more onto your educational, how do I call it, your educational background and maybe your experience in maybe campus if you don't have the relevant work experience. So you can leverage on your qualifications, you can leverage on the projects that you did to apply to those particular jobs. Abdullah say thanks a lot for this important session, much appreciated. Yes, Dan, you can unmute and speak.
Good evening, Coach.
Good evening.
I wanted to ask a question. First, I'm very grateful for this session. It's very insightful and we are gaining knowledge day by day.
Yes, you can ask the question.
I've noticed this trend on LinkedIn where you see, as you said, most companies are now turning to recruiting agencies. But now the problem we have is most recruiting agencies, when they advertise for a job, they now start want you to make your CV again. Even when you send them a CV that has been done by another coach, they will insist that you pay for them to make your CV to fit what they are looking for. How do we go about that?
Okay. One thing, with as much as organizations focusing on the recruiters when it comes to the job application, the conmen, and when I talk about the conmen, I mean even some of the recruiting agencies, because they're in business. And because they are in business as the recruiting agencies, the best way that they would think they would get your money without asking you to pay for the shortlisting is by telling you to revamp your CV. Because, for instance, if you return to these recruiters and you realize that some of these recruiters, they are CV revampers, like on their profile, we revamp CVs, we revamp this and that. So in that case, you realize that instead of them focusing you on getting the position, they just want to get your money, and they might even spare time and give you detailed review of how your CV, yet your CV is not the problem. Once you revamp your CV with them, you realize in most cases, you won't even get called for these particular interviews. So be cautious on someone who, if they want to give you a job, first of all, they advise you to revamp their CV before you send that particular application, because the platform is full of conmen. And this is also something rampant. You might be posting and then somebody will be pretending to be a recruiter. In the process, they'll tell you that you've been shortlisted for a job. You need to send your details. They'll go through your details. They'll tell you that, yes, we've reviewed your details and we can see that you have the qualifications that we are looking for. And then they'll send you maybe a contract, an offer letter to sign. Before you send the offer letter, they'll ask you for some certifications that you don't have. And because they're doing things in haste, they'll connect you with someone who can help you get those particular certificates. And in that case, they'll request you for money. For any job that someone requests you for money before before starting the official job, that should always be a red flag, and you should not lose your money there. Yes, Angel? You can unmute and speak. Yes, Angel?
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Can you hear me? Thank you so much. Firstly, I would like to thank you for the opportunity. The minute I saw the link, I clicked on it because I knew it would be informative. My question is around connections or networking on LinkedIn. I know class, or rather, should I say, later Zoom meeting, but I did notice that I'm not sure if it's specific to my country where I come from. I did notice that when it comes to connecting to people on LinkedIn, say for example, you have a connection that you'd like to create a, maybe for lack of a better term, I'll use the word connection again. You have maybe an MD to a company who you'd like to start a conversation with, not to ask for a job, but just to create a connection outside of their platform. Normally, they either don't respond, or in most cases, if maybe you're privy to acquiring an email from maybe someone who works with them, just to connect with them, they normally don't take it in a professional manner. My question is, how do you go about handling such situations where you have either hiring managers that you want to connect with who give you a negative response? Would it be a correct strategy to continue with, or would it be best for you to use a different strategy in this particular case? I hope I asked the question correctly.
It's
Thank you.
okay. I think I've grasped the part of it. By the way, Angel, last time when I was LinkedIn, I saw the post you did about A, B, and C, and I was very intrigued by this part, and I must congratulate you for doing a good job. I think you'd be a worthy connections to follow. Thank you. I would send you a message like
Thank
that.
you.
I would send you a message like that. If, for instance, you get a message like that, would you reply to message or will you assume the message?
I would respond, yes, I would.
So you see, there's a difference. Hey, Angel, I would like to be your friend on LinkedIn. Do you mind us being friends? And I noticed this particular thing about you, and I must say that, hey, you've grown over the years. I think I think you are an icon, and people should look up to you when it comes to this particular role. I'm in the same industry or in the same category, and I would like to get your experience on the same. Oh, by the way, I saw that you're working with Safaricom, and I've seen so many transformative projects that Safaricom is doing right now. How, like for instance, what is your contributions? And I think having a look at your position, I can clearly tell that you are impactful in that particular position that you have. I would just love to know more about maybe the architect, about whatever the position that you're reaching out. So in this case, like you're not reaching out directly to them to give you connections, you're starting the conversation with a compliment. So that when I look at you, I don't feel like you've come to collect. It's like we are having a kind of a mutual kind of relationship. Hey, Coach Kelvin, I saw the post you did today about remote job search. And for instance, I must compliment you for the good work that you're doing. And I would just love to know what is your experience about ABC, because you look like an expert in that particular field. So one of the best, I'm just giving you like examples of how you can reach out to these people. But one of the best, if you can do your research and find something personal about these people, either on Facebook or on any other platform or whatever they've posted on their LinkedIn, especially when it comes to sharing the personal stories, it would be a banger for you, because you'll realize that at least they'll be like, oh, this person has taken time to look for me. But in most cases, the only way that we network is, hey, I've seen you are doing a good job and I would like to have this particular conversation. That is what most people are doing on LinkedIn when it comes to marketing. So you need to up your game and do it differently. I don't know if I've answered your question.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Yes, Victor Otieno.
Good evening, Kelvin. Mine is on interview process. Let's say we have a scenario where a company has got interview in stages, maybe stage 1, stage 2, or maybe stage 3 also. And you've interviewed for the first stage, then they didn't inform you or when the next interview will be. and now you are just there wondering when will the next interview be. When is it good to inquire about the next interview?
All right. That one, when you're dealing with recruiters.
Yes.
These are some of the conversations that you should have with them, especially even during the screening. And they've told you, I will get back after the screening. You need to ask them, yes, when should I expect to hear from you? The time frame during that call, you should, so that at least you need to plan yourself for the sake of that. But if they say that we'll get back to you in the course of next week, you can maybe send application, you can send a reminder to maybe 2 or a day prior or even day after, just to follow up on the same. But that would be a conversation. For instance, if I've told you I'll get back to you, I would love to know what time frame should I give you for you to get back to me. I don't know if I've answered your question.
Yeah, that is in order.
Okay. Nancy asks, very insightful, after sending out the application, is it advisable to reach out to the agency? If so, within what time frame is ideal? Yes and no, because just like I mentioned, some of these agencies, they receive a lot of applications. And sometimes you might be reaching out to them and they don't know even your CV, or they've not even done the selections. So, but sometimes you can just do a follow-up email, maybe a week after or even 3 days after, just informing them that you've sent the email. All right, any other question? Anyone else with something they would love to clarify, or that they would love clarifications? All right, that is, I think I've answered all the questions even in the comment section. So yes, we are still working together, and this month I've dedicated myself to helping people get the remote jobs. You can keep on following me on LinkedIn for the kind of insightful content that I create, just to help you go through that process. And if you're willing to work together with me, we can work together, and I will show you. What I've been doing recently is helping candidates profile. Like the whole of this week, I've had candidates whereby I've helped them profile themselves for this remote working experience. Because also one thing I've realized when it comes to these remote jobs, this is where most of us get the kind of regrets, the most regrets. And we are trying to digest and see what are some of the reasons as to where we are getting these regrets, and what can we do together to help us maybe answer these particular questions for us to secure the interview. So you're open to work with me, because I can assure you that in the people that we've worked with, maybe the month of November and in the month of December, it won't go long before you start seeing maybe testimonials on that particular field. So I want to take this opportunity to say thank you for sparing time and sitting in this session. Yes, Moses, there's a recording. You will access this tomorrow morning. I'll share the link either on the LinkedIn or maybe on the WhatsApp group, and you'll be able to view. So thank you so much. And maybe before we close, I would just love to get feedback from at least 3 people of how the session was, and if maybe they got to learn something. But before we do that, Nancy, there's a question you are asking. Was it Nancy or Vivian? There's a question you're asking about, Mercy. Kindly touch on how to go about redundancy when looking for a job. Maybe, Mercy, if you are in, you can elaborate on that. Mercy? Okay, if Mercy is not there, can we get maybe now the feedback? Edith Otieno. Edith Otieno, have you learned something in today's session? Okay, my number, let me give you I've texted my number on the group. Maybe you can reach out for those people who would love to get For those people who've learned to get the recording and they are not in the group. Moses, maybe we can start with you. Have you learned something? Moses?
Yes.
Have you, maybe you can give us your expectation.
Yeah.
Not
Today's
your
session was
expectation, but if you've managed to learn something, that's what I mean.
yeah, I've managed to learn something.
Yes.
Today's session was extremely informative, and I've seen most of the errors that I've been having in application, and I will try to rectify on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Star, you had mentioned something about the volume. I hope you learned something. Star, unfortunately, I don't know your name. The only thing I can see is the star. James Dimbili, your comments?
Yeah, thank you for the session. It's definitely a learning opportunity. I think one thing I've picked is what I've also experienced a while back, where a recruiter shared a couple of slots for booking an interview, and picking a later date then cost me that opportunity, because it didn't take long before they got back and said that they had actually found the person they wanted. So yeah, to everyone who is out here, if you get that opportunity, maybe pick the earliest opportunity. You just never know how it's going to go. Otherwise, thank you, Kevin, for sharing your insights.
All right. Thank you guys so much. I think I now need to retire. We are gonna have the next session, which is going to be very more insightful than this one. How to utilize LinkedIn to build a personal brand. And when it comes to that, I mean how you can answer questions for content on LinkedIn, so that when recruiters visit your page, they'll have they'll find maybe valuable content on your page. So allow me retire as I prepare for my day tomorrow, my week tomorrow, and I don't take this for granted. Thank you so much for sparing time. Have a good night. You can unmute and wish me good night.
Thank you, and you too.
Bye.